Good morning, my beautiful people. How you all doing? I hope you're well. Today we are going to look into something that has to do with the Igbo identity. And I tell you, this video is going to be loaded because right now I want to trash out some issues. Sometimes when I go on the internet, I follow discussions of our people online, and I see that there are some of us who are trying to manipulate others. The ones who are trying to manipulate others, what they usually say is, you are not proud of Igbo culture or something. Go back to your roots. You are not proud of our culture. Let us go back to our roots. They are trying to manipulate others. Let me tell you something. You cannot tell somebody who is rooted already to go back to their roots. Before you tell Igbo people go back to your roots, what you are saying indirectly is that Igbo people are efulefu. Because it is an efulefu that doesn't know his roots. Efulefu are the ones who don't know their roots. Hefugefu, that is what that word means. Fafurefu. And so the majority of Igbo people are not Efulefus. The majority of Igbo people are self-conscious of their identity as Igbo people. They are very, very conscious. They are very, very proud of it, and they promote it at every point in time. That is a sign of a rooted people. What do I mean by we are already rooted people? Let me tell you something. If you want to know somebody that is culturally rooted, these are the things you look out for. You check, most of the Igbo people will bear Igbo names. It starts from your name, how you identify. Your name, when they ask you what is your name, what you provide is very, very important, because it is the first identifier of who you are, your name. Majority of Igbo people bear proud Igbo names today. So if you have people that bear proud Igbo names today, how can you say that these people are not rooted? They are rooted people. So people who are answering their what do you call it, their native names, you can't tell them that they are not rooted. They are very, very rooted people, because that is the first identifier of who you are, your name. Okay, after the name, you look at the language. Many people are proud of our language. We are very, very proud about it. We carry our language like it's gold. We carry it like it's gold. We value our language very deeply. And those of us who cannot speak Igbo, within ourselves, we always pinch ourselves and say, I wish I can speak. Yes, that is to tell you the value the Igbo people attach to their language. We speak our language. Many of us now, even outside the southeast, when you go to places like the north or even the west, you see a lot of people today, they are speaking Igbo. Anywhere they find themselves, they are always speaking Igbo. That is pride in the language. That person is rooted. Somebody who is a proud Igbo person and speaks Igbo and is proud of speaking Igbo, that person is rooted. You don't tell them to go back to their roots. Which roots again do you want them to go back to? I'm giving you the features of a well-rooted person to tell you that when you try to tell them go back to your root, you are trying to manipulate them into doing something else. And so the Igbo people are proud of their language. When you say Igbo na, you are lying. Igbo people are too proud of their language for the Igbo language to go. It's not possible. Go where? In fact, we are spreading the language more and more. So how can you tell somebody that speaks Igbo very well and is exporting Igbo to other countries? You are telling them to go back to their roots. Which roots again? That is manipulation. Which roots are you talking about again? Because these are the things that identify somebody. We've spoken about the name. We are talking now about the language. These are the things that identifies you. Now, you see Igbo people too that respect our native laws or our native way of doing things. Many of our people today, we respect Igbo tradition. We respect it and we keep it. We respect it and we keep it. In fact, let me just say something. When you go to even some of the Igbo communities outside the Southeast, some of them that are where they will tell you they are not Igbo. Watch those people very well. They might say they are not Igbo, but they always answer the name. They might say they are not Igbo, but they always speak the language, their dialect. They always speak it. They will not drop their dialect for any other language. Check it. Even if they tell you they are not Igbo, which is a political issue, they must always keep these things. And they must always keep the native laws that we have as Igbo people. What used to be our native laws? We used to have unso wine before. Wine non nansia, you keep away from the woman. Before in Igbo land. In Igbo land, wine non nansia, she doesn't go near the kitchen to cook anything. She just stays away for about 7 days or so. Or 8 days. Compulsorily. She stays away, in her own place. All these things are Jewish traditions. These things are hardcore Jewish traditions. Our omenala is 95% Jewish, and we keep to it. We keep to it. That is with such force. We don't want to leave omenala at all. So how can you see people that keep something like wine before? Anyway, not today anyway. Modernity and Christianity has made wine. We don't keep it much. But some still keep it. Some who are very, very hardcore, they do keep it. You know. Okay, you have wine, you have Alobi. You don't say Alobi in our place. In Igbo land. Alobi, you don't sell it. You don't sell it. Till today, it's like that. It doesn't change. It hardly changes. If you see people who sell their Alobi, those ones, they don't know what they are doing again. We don't sell it. So we are still keeping this law. So how can you tell somebody who is keeping this law that he should go back to his root? Which root again are you talking about? You have Igbo Dibo. You have Igbo Dibo, that is to serve somebody, and after serving them, the person will settle you. Sometimes we serve 6 years, sometimes we serve 7 years. In some cases, some people serve up to 10 years. Igbo Dibo is all these things I'm mentioning to you is our native way of doing things. And I want to show you that at least 98% of Igbo people are still keeping all these things. So which route are you talking about for them to go back to? How can Abo Dibo look at people are still taking in their relatives, you know, to serve them. And it's helping Igbo land because we are people who the government are neglecting. But we are not feeling it economically. We are not feeling it because when one person makes it, he go and pick another person in the village and train him up and give him very good money to start his own business. And when that one grows, he will go and take somebody else in the village. That cycle, you see that cycle of Igbo Dibo is a hardcore Jewish practice. It is a hardcore Jewish practice. You see about Jacob Onye Balo Dibo. Bacho Dibo, the man Meya Wayo. Onye Balo Dibo Meya Wayo. Welu the first daughter that he didn't even fancy and gave to him to marry. Meya Wayo. Welu the first daughter on natural. Welu Nia. And Abo Dibo look at it is not going to change. So Jacob had to go back again and backward Dibo second time. You can imagine. Oye Mecheko settlement. You know, he had to go back, marry the Odibo also 7 years again before they gave him the woman he wanted, which was Rachel. These are our native laws, and we have been doing it like this right from time. And we are not going to change it. So if you see somebody in Abo Odibo today, then you are telling the person that he should go back to his root. Which root again are you talking about? Which root are you talking about? Igbo till tomorrow. When they, if we go back in history to the 1800s, when the first missionaries came, not even missionaries, even the slave masters, when they were on ground, they were writing about a lot of records about Igbo people. They said Nandi and Ebu, that they don't know how come these people know how to do these things. But they say we don't know how come these people knew about this thing, and they keep it as their culture, as their tradition. They keep it. That they don't know how come Igbo people know this thing without the touch of Christianity. Is in all the records. Without a drop of Christianity in Igbo land, they were keeping this thing and keeping it judiciously. So when you go to a records from 1700, 1800, you see these things inside. And you know the root of the constitution in Igbo land. It's just a carryover from where the Igbo ancestors came out from in Israel. They just carried all those practices down to this place, established them. Now, there's something you will see about our native laws. Our native laws don't vary from place to place. Omenala doesn't vary. I've told people Omenala adere Omenala bo to God. To God. Omenala adere. What am I saying? If you check the Igbo tradition, it is the same up to 95% from the north of Igbo land to the south, from the far east to the far west. It is the same. It is the same. If we were different people, you will have some side will be practicing one thing and some side will be practicing another thing. But that is not the case. All these things I've mentioned now are kept by the entirety of Igbo land. Omenala bo to Kodi is not two. So that shows we are not two people that mix up actually. We are one people that came, settled here and established ourselves. Of which some of these people don't know. You talk about Omugo. Till tomorrow, we are not going to change Omugo. Omugo is part of our hardcore traditional practice. You know why today and your wife pushed to bed, very likely your mother will go there and support her. It doesn't change. These are things that cannot change. Look at it will continue to be like that. And these are our hardcore practices. Now, how can you tell a people who keep all these hardcore practices, you tell them to go back to their root? Which root again are you talking about? Which root are you talking about? Let me tell you something. Stop disparaging our culture. Stop defiling our culture. I must tell you the truth. Stop defiling our culture. Let me tell you something. When you talk about going back to our roots, unless you are trying to tell me that you want us to go back to the main root, the main root of the Igbo Omenala, the main root of Igbo Omenala is Judaism as it is practiced in Israel today. That is the main root. If you are talking about go back to a root, you better know that's what you are talking about. You want us to go back to the main root of, you know, of our Omenala, which is Judaism as it is practiced in Israel today. And that is one thing, if you are observant, that is one thing Mazi Nnamdi Kanu showed Igbo people. There's one thing about Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, there's one thing I like him for. Igbo Kuru Biyogeme, he will not say something and do another thing. As he was telling you that this is our root, or this is our culture as it is, he went and adopted it and brought it back to us. And many of us are following that faith today. That is Judaism as practiced in Israel. There are a lot of Judaism members among the Igbo people today. You see them, you know, they wear the skull caps and all that. That is fine. He went to the bottom. He went to the bottom. If we are talking about root, you better know that that's the root you are talking about. There's no any other root in Igbo culture that is not going to bring the Judaism in Israel. And that is what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu did. Because that is how a leader should behave. You should behave by action and not just by mere words. That is what he did. That is exactly what he did. And I will tell you my own personal input on this. If you want to practice our native love, practice it as you are practicing it today. As you practice it, the Igbo mix. What we practice in our midst now is Judaism with an African touch. The Africanism inside our Igbo tradition is about 5% or so. It's not much. The Africanism in it is not much, actually. It's just about 5%. I will tell you, practice it as we are practicing it now. Because they say on the street, waiting there inside your Sokoto, you don't need to go to Sokoto to get it. What we are practicing already is 95% Jewish tradition. And that is what we call Omenala today. And Oburo Itokode, Otu Kode, Omenala Botu. Exactly how you say Igbo Botu is exactly how Omenala Botu. The slight variations you have is Odebendi. Odebendi is things that a community changes. They just change it a bit because of their location. You know, they just slight changes you have, slight changes you have from community, which is normal. There's no way the culture will be 100% the same from all the locations of Igbo. It's not possible now. That is not possible because each culture existed in its own space, and that is how the band came out. Small changes you have, but the general Omenala is more or less the same, 100% from east to west, from north to south. So when you tell people go back to their roots, which roots are you talking about again? You don't know what you are talking. You are trying to untwist them and manipulate them into doing something. Now, how can you tell somebody who is promoting the Igbo identity? Most of us today, we are promoters of Igbo identity. Nobody give us that work. We are just doing it on our own because we love our culture. We are doing it on our own because we love our culture. What do I mean that we are promoters of Igbo identity? When you go on the internet, you always see posts describing Igbo culture. That is how you know people that are rooted. You will always see Igbo people talking about their culture online. Sometimes you go to Twitter, you see long arguments between different groups about our culture, different aspects of our culture. The other time they were arguing about kola nut, who should break kola nut. One lady came out and said women should be allowed to break kola nut. That is to tell you, Eurocentrism is disturbing such person. There's nothing like gender inequality. Evolve in your own space. Don't try to do it as a woman. Don't try to do it as a man. It's common sense. Also, at that time, during those arguments, they were arguing about the heap of the meat, where that is always reserved for the Ada among the Igbo people. They were arguing about it. Some were just saying some things there. But they don't even know that this thing also is a reminder of what happened between God and Jacob. At one point in history, God touched Jacob on the hip and crippled him. And so from that day onwards, all the children of Jacob, all descendants of Jacob, to remember that action of God crippling their ancestor by touching him on the hip. That part of the hip in any animal is always reserved for the first daughter. It is a way of reminding the children of Israel or the descendants of Jacob that this is what happened to your ancestor before. God touched him there and he became crippled immediately, instantly. And so it is a reminder. And that is why till today you say Adan Eri Kwanu. They just carve that part out for the first daughter and say this will be reserved for the first daughter forever and ever, as a reminder of what happened to our ancestor, Jacob. So you see Igbo people talking about their culture all the time, which shows that they are rooted. They are well-rooted people. So which other place do you want them to go again when you say go back to your roots? We are already rooted people. Where are we going back to? We are rooted to the point that we are now exporting the Igbo identity outside Igbo land. You go to a place like Lagos. Let me tell you something. I told somebody about 2 or 3 years ago that you see a place like Lagos. Igbo people might outnumber the Yoruba people in Lagos, but some people don't know. The Igbo people might outnumber them in Lagos. Now, I told somebody 2 to 3 years ago, my good colleague, I told him, you see that Lagos, very soon Lagos is going to have a dual heritage. I told him this thing. What do I mean by a dual heritage? Very soon, you see Lagos, you see, that has that high number of Igbo people. Very soon, Lagos will have a Yoruba and an Igbo heritage. I said it. Quote me anywhere. Quote me anywhere. What I'm telling you is facts. I am telling you the fact. You see Lagos, very soon it will have a dual heritage. It will have a Yoruba heritage and an Igbo heritage. Because the Igbo people, they are fiercely Igbo. They are cultural. Igbo, as what do you call it? Lagos will not escape the imprint of Igbo, of the Igbo people. It can never. Lagos can never escape the imprint of Igbo people. It's just time it will take. 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line, you will see that a dual heritage will emerge in Lagos. There will be the Yoruba heritage of Lagos and the Igbo heritage. It is what will happen. At the current rate of things, or at the current state of things, that is what is going to happen. That is to show you that the Igbo are fiercely conscious of their identity. They are conscious of who they are. And let me tell you something. When you also go out of Igbo land, when you go to places like the Caribbeans, the people who are Igbo descendants there, makana obalada atuase. Our people say obalada atuase. The people who are Igbo descendants in the Caribbeans, they are also fiercely Igbo. They don't hide it. They tell you we are Igbo people. Our ancestors were brought here as slaves. That is an unfortunate history, truly. But it doesn't stop us from identifying as Igbo. They identify as Igbo people. They identify as Igbo people. They follow the Igbo culture. They follow Igbo news. They follow all these things happening in our place, if you don't know. They follow it. Both the good and the bad, they follow it. Because they don't want to be lost. They want to have a connection to their land. To the land of their ancestors. They want to have that connection and they want to maintain it. And so that's why they always follow events that is happening in our place. So how can you see people who are fiercely conscious of who they are like this, to follow things happening in their land, to promote their identity, the Igbo identity, to follow the native way of doing things, our Menala, to speak our language? You have many Igbo people are proud of their language. Many Igbo. It's hard to say an Igbo person that is not proud of the language. It's very, very hard. You have Igbo people who are answering Igbo names, and you say that they should go back to their roots. Which roots are you talking about again? You don't know what you are talking. You are trying to untwist them. These things are mentioned at the core aspects of our identity. These things I mentioned now are the core aspects of our identity. There are others, of course. There are other minor ones. But these ones I mentioned are the core aspect. Now, when you are trying to say go back to your roots and you tell them that they should go and bring Omaliko or they should go and bring Odu to serve them, before you know they are going back to their roots, you are talking bunkum. You are talking absolute rubbish. You know why? Let me tell you what Igbo believe. What it centers on. Let me explain to you Igbo belief. The Igbo people, from the north part of Igbo land to the south, to the far east and the far west, the Igbo people have one belief. When you talk about religion, we have one belief. And that is the belief in Chukwu Abiyama. Take it anywhere in the world. The Igbo people, our belief, our national belief as a people, because there is what you call national belief. That is what every Igbo person believes in. There is something everybody believes in, every Igbo person. And that is the supreme nature of God over the affairs of the Igbo nation. We call God Chukwu Abiyama in our language. Chukwu Abiyama. That is the belief. Check anywhere. Go to the Anioma people. I brought out a document from Abo last time, Okwa and the people. I showed you what they were calling God. They called God what? Chukwabiama. Go to the southern part of Igbo land and check what they call God. I've read documents from, is it Umbano also? Yes, I believe it's Umbano. One of the ancient documents. They call God what? Chukwabiama. You go to the northern part of Igbo land today, where you have boundary with the Igala people. Ask what they call God, or ask their belief in God. Chukwabiama. You go to the Far East, Chukwabiama. That is what we have as a national belief. That is our religion as Igbo people. They believe in Chukwabiama over the affairs of the Igbo man and the Igbo society. That is our belief. Chukwabiama. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something you don't know. You see things like Omaliko. You see things like Kamano or Igwekala. All these things are the same deity. Kamano, Igwekala, Amadioha, the same deity found across different parts of Igbo land. They gave it a different name. When you talk about Amadioha or Maliko or Odo, when you go to the northern part of Igbo land, you hear things like Odo. It's a very powerful deity. Back then, it doesn't have that prominence anymore. When you hear things like this, these things are not the traditional practices of Igbo people. These things are the traditional practices of particular groups. Particular groups. Anabofandiotu. Nabo. People who believe in these things are called what? Ndiotu. Nabo. Fanonotu. And that is what they believe within their group. It is not a national practice of the Igbo people. It is not something that is found across Igbo land. That is why there is no deity that you can find across Igbo land. Quote me wrong. You can never. There is no single deity you will find across the entire of Igbo land that is being worshipped. Deities are specific to groups. They are specific to communities. If you take that deity out of from this community to the next community will not accept it, because the next community will tell you we have one that is native to us, so we will not accept it. But these things are O2. It is a group. Let me tell you, there is a record taken down in, I think, the 1800s, where people who worship Igwekala were fighting the Allah people. If you see that name, Igwekala, they deliberately named it like that because they were against the Allah people who worship Allah. When Kamano was brought, or Amadioha, when Amadioha was brought to some parts of Unri, some places closer to Unri, they could not name it Amadioha again. This thing I'm telling you, it's hard to hear it from any other source because people don't read. They couldn't name it Amadioha because the Unri people and their dialect, they don't know, they are not familiar with Amadi. So they had to look for another name, and they had to look for a name that will rival some of the local groups. They had to look for a name that will rival some of the local groups, the local Otu they had around the Unri. Some of them were worshipping Allah. And so they had to look for a name that will challenge Allah. And so they name it Igwekala. That is, what is up is greater than what is down. That is what that name means. What is up is greater than what is down. So they used it to challenge the people, the groups, the Otu, worshipping Allah. And at a point in history, the friction became very high and they started fighting. They started killing themselves. This is recorded history. Igwekala and Allah people, Allah adherents, they call them adherents. That is a small group of people that worship one particular time. They started fighting and killing themselves. Because Igwekala people were trying to impose that their own Otu. And the Allah people on ground refused. They said, this thing be Alabia. This thing you just renamed it. This is Amadioha. You renamed it to Igwekala. We are not going to accept it. And they started killing themselves. But the rest of the Igbo nation were not part of that fight. Because the Igbo nation believes in what? Chukwabiama. Those things are Otu, Otu Kahabo, Otu, different groups, specialized groups of people. And some of these groups, because they had prominence, sometimes when a young man grows to a certain age, they will say you must go into this particular Otu. You must go into this particular Otu. But it is not a national thing among Igbo people. What do I mean by national something? It's not something you can find across the entirety of Igbo land. These are group specific. They are group specific and community specific. What you find across the entire Igbo land is the supreme nature of God, Chukwu Abiyama over the Igbo people. That is our traditional religion. Any other thing in our food to kob. Any other thing in our food na bro Chukwu Abiyama bo to kob. Na bo Igwe ka allow this, that, whatever you call their respective deities. Amaliko and all of them. They are Otu Kahabo. If you don't agree, they don't force you. You stay away from it and worship only Chukwu Abiyama that you are worshiping. And those deities, those group that keep to those deities, how they operate is that they will come in. Maybe there's a problem the community is facing. Maybe there's one disease the community is facing. They will say, this our deity can solve this thing for you people. And maybe because the people are now desperate for help, they will say, okay, let's see what your deity can do. And maybe at that point in time, they will just do some, some manipulation there. And the disease will go. And they will get converts. That's how they get converts in each community. And that is when, back then, when you go to Igwe Kala, maybe you want a child, you have not been able to take in. You want a child, what do? You go to Igwe Kala. Igwe Kala will tell you what you do, the things you bring, and they will do the prayers for you. But when you give birth, you must what? You must name the child something that has to do with Igwe. That's why you have a lot of Igbo people bearing Igwe, Mwigwe, or just Igwe. Is from Igwe Kala. One of the ancestors went to the deity for assistance for one thing or the other. Maybe to get rich self. Maybe he's not making enough money from his farming, and he went to Igwe Kala. So whenever you get what you want, you must give something to the Igwe Kala. If it's a child, you name him Mwigwe. You must name him something that has to do with Igwe. Some of the Igwe names you are saying is from there. That is how it came about. That is how those names came about. So yeah, Bundi Otu is a group. If you want, you enter. If you don't want, you stay away. But the problem now, Bundi Otu today, they are trying to push all of us, stampede all of us into their Otu. How can you do that? It's not possible. What we believe in is Chukwu Abiyama. That is what we will believe in forever. You cannot stampede us into following Otu. So Otu, small groups. Small groups is what you want to stampede more than 50 million people to enter. How? It's not possible. It's not possible. And those things do not define Igbo identity. Otua does not define Igbo identity. It has no impact on Igbo identity. Any Otu you are talking about, any deity you are talking about, has no impact on the Igbo identity. What is our identity? What speaks about our identity is our names, as I mentioned before. Our language, being proud of your language and speaking it, learning to speak your language. If you cannot learn it by any means possible. By respecting the native ways of doing this, I mentioned about the Omugwa, Igbo, Dibo, Igbo, and the rest of them. Amobi and the rest of them. And I talk about promoting the Igbo identity. Many of us are exporters of Igbo identity today. Wherever we go, we make sure that we make an impact with our Igbo identity. Such that community, if they were not Igbo before, they will start to have some Igbo influence. When you do these things, then you are a proud Igbo. Nobody should tell you go back to your roots because you are already rooted. You are already fantastically rooted. You are already fantastically rooted as an Igbo man. Especially when you wear an Igbo name and you speak the Igbo language. Give us a fat one, and you are keeping to our native laws. Well, what else? What else are they trying to manipulate you into doing? Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them, ignore them. Otu cannot define, Otu cannot define, Igbo is too big for that. Igbo is too big for that. Different groups with their different Otu or deities cannot define the Igbo identity. It never defined it before, it will not define it today. Those things are Ikwerenye, Nivefan Emeba, Isolo Otufa. You begin to keep their laws because all of them have laws they live by. And all of them are rivals to the others. All of them are rivals to the others. When Igwe Kala is against Allah people, two of them don't move on the same way. They don't move on the same way at all. Open your na that thing. Don't allow anybody to railroad you or stampede you into something you don't want to do. Ignore that person. OCK too much, a block one year. That was not bullshit. So that is it. We'll stop here. I believe that this one will help some of us to understand some things. Alright, thank you very much.